been almost 20 years since Kevin Hart burst onto the scene as the scrappy comic everyone wanted to see. A kid from the rough streets of Philadelphia who turned dysfunction, pain, and chaos into laughter. His high-energy storytelling, exposing awkward stories of his family, his childhood, and himself, made audiences feel like they were living it with him. And that connection turned him into a phenomenon, selling out NFL stadiums, starring in box office juggernauts, and building an empire that stretched from tequila brands to media companies, even fast food. But somewhere in the middle of his unstoppable rise, the man who seemed too authentic to ever be fake started to look exactly like the product of Hollywood's machine. The same scandals he used to laugh about in his sets became breaking news. The roles he took became repetitive parodies of himself. And the more power he gained, the louder the whispers grew that Kevin Hart wasn't the scrappy hustler anymore, but the one pulling strings, and the one deciding who made it and who didn't. And the story of how he got there says everything about what Hollywood does to those who make it too big. Kevin's entire persona was built on surviving dysfunction. He grew up with a strict mother who tried to shield him from the chaos of a father addicted to drugs and constantly in and out of jail. His older brother got caught up in the streets, ended up in front of a judge, and had to choose between prison or the military. Kevin was the one who never got out of sight, the kid whose mother micromanaged every move just to keep him from becoming another statistic. And for a while, it worked. But what saved him wasn't discipline alone, it was his energy. Even as a shoe salesman, Kevin couldn't stop making people laugh, and that spark sent him into comedy. But the comedy world didn't embrace him right away. He bombed. He got booed off stage. A chicken wing was once thrown at his face during a strip club set. But Kevin learned something important in those humiliating moments. The audience didn't want borrowed material or impressions. They wanted him. So he leaned into telling his own stories about his strict mom, his insecurities, and his messy relationship with his dad. That's when he started connecting, and that's when Hollywood noticed. But notice doesn't mean acceptance. Kevin's first big shot was The Big House, a sitcom he created loosely based on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. A BC pulled the plug on it before he even got to promote it, crushing his big break in real time. His next chance, Soul Plane, was supposed to make him a star, but the movie leaked online, flopped at the box office, and was buried by critics. In Hollywood, 2 failures in a row can end a career. But Kevin didn't quit. Instead, he stopped chasing Hollywood and bet on himself. He doubled down on stand-up, and in 2011, his special Laugh at My Pain became one of the highest-grossing comedy events in history. He was finally undeniable. But that same year, his personal life started unraveling. His marriage ended in divorce, he began publicly leaning into alcohol, and in 2013, he was arrested for DUI after nearly crashing into a gas tanker. He spun those flaws into comedy, making his ex-wife the centerpiece of his jokes, mimicking her voice on stage and turning her into a punchline. Audiences laughed, but it planted a seed. Because while Kevin used self-deprecation as his armor, there was always another side. One where the jokes stopped being jokes. The criticism only grew louder when fellow comedians started openly questioning him. Mike Epps called him overrated, saying he was more marketing than talent. Aries Spears accused him of leaning on writers, suggesting his comedy wasn't fully his own. And Cat Williams, flat out, called him an industry plant, claiming Kevin's meteoric rise, sitcoms, film roles, and a Hollywood push within just a few years of arriving in LA was no coincidence. For the first time, Kevin wasn't just being judged for his comedy. He was being judged for how he got to the top. But Hollywood kept cashing in. He became the go-to sidekick in comedies, the loud, fast-talking, hyperactive character next to a taller, stronger lead. Ice Cube in Ride Along, Will Ferrell in Get Hard, The Rock in Central Intelligence, and Jumanji. The formula worked, but it boxed him in. Kevin became famous by exaggerating his insecurities, but that also made him feel like a caricature. Critics wondered if the real Kevin Hart was gone, replaced by a polished product built for maximum box office returns. And then the scandals hit. In 2017, Kevin was caught on camera with another woman while his wife, Eniku, was heavily pregnant. He laughed it off online, but the rumors stuck. And then came the bombshell. An explicit video recorded in Las Vegas leaked online, followed by an alleged extortion attempt demanding millions. Kevin admitted to cheating, issued a public apology, and claimed he was the victim of blackmail. Suddenly, Kevin wasn't the underdog begging for a seat at the table. He was the one holding the keys, and he didn't want to admit it. When pressed about being a gatekeeper, Kevin brushed it off like the word didn't even make sense to him. But then he reframed it. Not gatekeeping, just business. He only invests in what guarantees him a return, which sounds reasonable until you realize that's exactly what gatekeeping is. Deciding who's worth backing and who isn't, based not on talent, but on what keeps his empire safe. And just when he was defending himself against those accusations, an old scandal resurfaced. In a deposition from the 2017 extortion case, Kevin admitted under oath that he had slept with Mantia Sabag, the woman in the Las Vegas video, while his wife was pregnant. He claimed drugs were involved, that she deliberately positioned herself for the hidden camera, and that he was pressured into the situation. But no matter how he framed it, the bottom line was the same. Kevin cheated, lied, and let it play out in the most humiliating way possible. Yet, in that very same year, Hollywood awarded him the Mark Twain Prize for American humor, one of the highest honors in comedy, putting him alongside legends like Richard Pryor and George Carlin. It was a surreal contradiction. The same man being celebrated as a comedy icon was also being exposed as a brand, a corporation in sneakers, a gatekeeper who critics argued had long since lost the raw authenticity that made people love him. Kevin Hart built an empire bigger than almost any comedian in history. But the more successful he became, the more polished, manufactured, and corporate he looked. The kid from Philly, who once made audiences laugh by exposing his pain, became the CEO who buries his flaws under products, investments, and branding. The question now isn't whether Kevin Hart is funny. It's whether the man who built his empire on authenticity has sacrificed the very thing that made him special in exchange for power, money, and control. And if that's the case, then maybe the biggest joke of all is that Kevin Hart stopped being the underdog a long time ago and became exactly what he claimed he'd never be. But the sympathy didn't last. His friend Jonathan J.T. Jackson was later arrested for allegedly trying to extort him. And suddenly, the scandal was about betrayal as much as it was about infidelity. Kevin had cheated, yes, but he was also being targeted by someone from his own circle. To the public, it didn't make him sympathetic. It made him look messy. And just when it seemed like his image couldn't take another hit, it did. In 2018, Kevin was announced as the host of the Oscars, the biggest stage in entertainment. Within days, old homophobic tweets resurfaced, jokes about breaking a dollhouse over his son's head if he ever played with it, and slurs directed at others. Kevin refused to apologize, claiming he had already addressed it years before, and when the Academy gave him an ultimatum, he stepped down. Even after apologizing later, the damage was done. Instead of being Hollywood's chosen host, he became the face of controversy. By 2019, Kevin's comedy specials were still making money, but critics said they were repetitive, safe, and predictable. The man who once built his career on brutal honesty seemed to be recycling the same bits. And then life reminded him how fragile it all was. A near-fatal car accident shattered his back in 3 places, forcing him into surgery and months of painful rehab. For a moment, the world saw a different Kevin Hart, vulnerable, human, and grateful just to be alive. But when he came back with a Netflix docuseries promising raw honesty, it looked more like PR cleanup than truth. Still, his business empire exploded. He launched fast food chains, tequila, supplements, tech investments, and most importantly, turned his production company Heartbeat into a corporation worth hundreds of millions. He wasn't just a comedian anymore, he was a CEO. But the more corporate he got, the more he acted like the product of Hollywood's machine. One moment on Kelly Clarkson's show made that crystal clear. When she casually mentioned the kind of massive paychecks streaming platforms were offering, Kevin quickly stuck his finger in his mouth, signaling for her to stop talking. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. Cat Williams said Kevin was the one deciding who got in the door and who didn't. But Monique told a different story, that Kevin promised to back her talk show revival, then ghosted her completely, leaving the project to die.